Hey everybody, welcome to the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast, dedicated to raising awareness, sharing IBD stories, and offering support for those with Crohn's and colitis. Together, we can share knowledge, experiences, and help show the world the many faces of IBD.
Well, hi everyone. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Gish, Crohn's warrior since 2006 and lifelong fitness fanatic. Now, you might notice today that there's a little more background noise than usual, and that's because today we are recording inside Lulu's Bakery and Cafe in San Antonio because my guest this morning is about to take on the Lulu's Texas Ranger Chicken Fried Steak Challenge. You might recognize this ostomy advocate and food challenge competitor, Michael Simmons, as Mike Flair on Instagram, where he chronicles his ostomy and IBD journey, including raising the bar for eating without a colon. Thank you so much for joining me today, Mike, and welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So before we jump into how you actually got started doing these food challenges, why don't you start by sharing your Crohn's story and how you were diagnosed?
Sure. I was diagnosed kind of right at the end of 2008, started 2009. Over the entire process is about 3 months. I just started to not really feel all that well, and you have some of the typical symptoms of mainly just frequency and loose consistency. And at first, I just thought I had like a stomach bug or possibly the flu or something like that. But after about 2 to 3 weeks of not getting better, starting to see things like blood and actually like noticeable weight loss, severe loss of appetite, we decided to go ahead and, I was actually back home. It was Thanksgiving time, so I was home anyway, and we went to a doctor, and eventually they got us to a GI, and they did some tests, and over the course of about probably 2-ish months total after those tests is when I was officially diagnosed with Crohn's to begin with in early 2009.
And where did they start? So you got your diagnosis, actually right about the same time as when I got my official diagnosis, 2009. But so you got your diagnosis. What was your path from there? Did they start you on medications? Tell me a little bit about the journey from when you got your diagnosis, how you did, and then it was almost 10 years later that you finally got your ostomy. So tell me a little bit about that time and then up to the surgery.
Yeah, right after being diagnosed, they started me on a gluten-free, dairy-free diet, just kind of as a precaution, just because of a lot of those foods. I was always like really active and pretty healthy eater. I'm not as strict as I had to go on to be after being sick, but still ate pretty healthy, and they just did that to kind of like just reset your digestive system and just kind of get you back in balance and maybe avoid any more irritation or agitation or that kind of thing. And I did that for about 6 months. And in the meantime, they also got the paperwork going to start Remicade. This was my first treatment option that they did. And I noticed some improvement right away. Just a little more energy was kind of the overall thing. Because at that point, it was pretty clear that I was going to eventually be heading to. I just graduated college, and I was living about 2 hours away. So by then, we pretty much knew I was going to have to move back home. So in my spare time, I was kind of like cleaning up, just getting things organized, and like that would just wipe me out. I could only do about 40 minutes at a time. And then after that, about a month of the low doses of Remicade, I could go for closer to maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe at the most. It was like sorting stuff from a seated position. But I just noticed overall just feeling a little bit more energetic, having a little bit more of an appetite. And then after the introductory dose, they put me on to just like the regular drop rate. I'm not really sure what it's called, but I had a reaction to it. I went into anaphylactic shock. And that was probably the overall scariest thing because, they had me drugged. I was just starting to fall asleep, and I didn't even really know what was happening. I just started to notice I was having trouble breathing, but I was still kind of in that dreamy, kind of drugged, sleepy state. And I kept taking deep breaths, and I noticed my breath was getting shorter and shorter. So I finally if you've ever been in the hospital, they have the little like kind of panic button. I'd never had to push it before, and I was like fumbling around for that. And I called in the nurse, and I could just tell by her face like something was wrong when she saw me, and she called like everybody in. I couldn't really speak at that point either, so they got me in as soon as they stopped it. You could almost feel it like immediately, like kind of returning, and it felt like just when you hold your breath for a really long time, because obviously you're not getting any air, and it just kind of came back, kind of came back to it, and the doctor was there just making sure everything was okay, and they're like, yeah, everything's stabilizing now, we turned it off. So they went back to like the low rate, and then I don't remember how many weeks. I want to say 8 weeks apart from the full, whatever the full doses are. And they thought that maybe I just hadn't eaten enough before or something. It was just my body like couldn't handle it. But we tried it 2 more times, and each time I still went into shock. Although those times were not nearly as scary because I was kind of aware that it might be happening. Well, so they just left me on that low rate. Because that was helping a little bit, but obviously that wasn't going to be a long-term solution. So between that and then just sticking with the gluten-free, dairy-free, the symptoms had gone away for the most part. So then they put me on a drug. In the meantime, they were going to try it with just sticking with that diet, and they had a drug. I guess they don't use it very much anymore, like from other doctors that I've spoken to after having this first doctor, but it's called dipentum, and you take it orally, and I guess it's similar to aspirin, I think, aspirin or Tylenol, I don't remember which, but it's a low level, actually I don't remember exactly what it is, but I think that like it kind of coats your digestive tract, and it kind of just acts as a barrier, like once you've already kind of gotten it pretty much healed. And I was doing that for a while, and that seemed to be working. I don't know if I ever achieved full remission, but in terms of like physical symptoms, I wasn't feeling anything and felt pretty good. They said I could slowly start adding like wheat and dairy back to my diet if I wanted to, and I did that. I could never really tell. I stuck with the gluten-free thing in the long run for about 6-7 years, something like that. And the dairy-free, that just seemed like certain. Well, I didn't really eat a lot of like cheese or milk or anything. Like yogurt was probably the main thing that I had to cut out, and cottage cheese. And then after that, I never really noticed that bothering me enough to cut it out once I put it back in my diet. Just maybe certain things there are always those things that you can't really tell. It's like your body just kind of decides to give out on you, at any given time. But I would just kind of go easy on dairy products. Like I wouldn't have more than maybe like 2 servings in a day, and not like 2 meals in a row or something like that. But for the most part, dairy didn't really hurt me that I could tell. And once everything started to like kind of stabilize and become normal, like I didn't want to be on any drugs. I thought I had the diet figured out. So I stopped taking the dipentum, and that doctor was really hard to get a hold of, which was kind of frustrating. And so I stopped taking that, and I just tried to stay on the healthy diet. And probably for about another year or so, that worked. And I don't think I saw the doctor anymore from then, but it was in, I want to say May 2011. I started to get all the symptoms like I did the first time before I'd been diagnosed, and I went to a new doctor, and he actually put me right into the hospital, which was my first actual hospital stay from it. And I tried to go back onto what I thought was the diet that was helping me, and I went in there, had to have the colonoscopy and all the tests again, and it was just as bad as it was the first time. And this time he was going to put me on Humira as a treatment. And he thought my case was so aggressive, he wanted me on it weekly, as opposed to, it's supposed to be taken bi-weekly. So I did that from starting in 2012. And then it was one of those things where I really wanted it to work. So I think I kept looking for, I think it's working a little bit. And then it's like, it really wasn't. It may have helped a little bit. And this is when I started going back to the gluten-free and limited dairy at that point. And, Humira never really. Well, at first he was telling me that should within a month to 2 months you should start to notice something, and it was really hard to tell. And overall, I was not that healthy, but I was healthy enough that I could go out. And worst case scenario is I might get the feeling where it's all right, well, my next priority is I have to go find the bathroom. But it wasn't like I have to drop everything and run. It's just sort of next one I see, or I'm going to go looking for one. So it allowed me to do most normal things, and then because of being anemic. I was just like very low energy and just overall didn't feel great. But I wouldn't really, I didn't consciously feel sick or anything like that at the time. And that's what kind of eventually when they decided that the Humira wasn't working, I had to see another specialist, and they started me on methotrexate, which is taken with it. And that one, just to kind of get right to it, that over about 6 months, that didn't do anything either. So I was on the Humira total for about a year on a double dose, a weekly dose, and then about half of that year, I was also on methotrexate. And that by then, I could tell like nothing was really happening. I might feel a little better on some days, then a little bit worse on others, but overall, I was just kind of lingering in that same area. So I had actually met with a surgeon then back in, I think it was 2012 still, and I'd pretty much gone through the entire process of having my colon removed, other than just making the appointment and talking myself into it. Fortunately, in that time, with a family friend, one of my classmates' older sisters contacted me. She's a dietitian, and she told me about the Specific Carbohydrate Diet and some other diets to look into that. It's not a cure, obviously, but it's very successful. So she got me going in that path. And looking at it initially, I was like, a lot of these things I could cut out. It wouldn't be that hard. There were a few that I was like, oh, that's going to be tough, to just quit cold turkey. But my thought was like, well, maybe if I could like start it just right at like 80%, maybe I get 80% better. And at least that could kind of get you motivated to do the rest, which. Yeah, I don't know if it was exactly 80%, but that is pretty much what happened. Like, I stopped eating the things that were really easy for me to eliminate, and almost like overnight, the physical acute symptoms went away, like more of like the cramps and stomach aches and everything, because there was nothing new feeding into it, and obviously it would take a little bit more time for actual healing to go on the inside. But eventually, I don't remember exactly how long I did it, but I did start to notice everything getting better, and at that point, the doctor, he still was urging me towards surgery, and he just wanted me on the drugs, and I was getting really frustrated with him, and my blood count was dropping dramatically again, and they thought my spleen was failing, so they sent me to like a blood specialist, and I didn't remember off the top of my head what your spleen does, and so I looked it up, and it has to do a lot with your immune system as well. And I know, like, from the Humira commercials, obviously, it says, it's going to compromise your immune system. So, like, I brought that up to him, could that be an issue? Because at that point, I already kind of knew I didn't want to be on the drugs. But, in a year, I didn't really have any major bad side effects either. So I was kind of not too concerned about it. At that point, I took myself off of everything, just, without consulting him. I had one, and then this is after a couple more weeks, I'd been on the specific, I still wasn't following it like 100%, but I was following it as well as I could. It was very close. There were very few things, but it was doing just that. And I was feeling way better. I was noticing things, and at least for the time being, I was happy, doing what I was doing. So when I went in there to talk to him, he was kind of like, wow, your blood levels are going back up. Everything looks good. He's like, the Humira must finally be working, and then that's when I told him, it was off, and like, he got really, really angry. And he was kind of like stomping around his office like a child that you've taken a toy or something away from. And he was saying, we've done all this work, and is we this, we that. And I'm just like, geez, like, you haven't done anything. All he had done at that point was just keep giving me more drugs. Oh, it's not working. You have to go have surgery, So luckily I didn't have surgery back then, because I did that for about 3.5 years with no doctor, nobody kind of checking in on me, and all my symptoms had pretty much gone away. So I had achieved clinical remission where you don't feel anything, but obviously I didn't have any way to test what it actually looked like on the inside. But at least for that time, so that was roughly between like 2012 and like 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. The only real symptom I had was just the fatigue. I think my blood count was still on the low side, but again, I didn't really know. And it obviously wasn't unsafe because I was able to do a lot of things. I was still very active. Within about the same week, somebody, when I was more active on Facebook, on like the Facebook page, was saying how like a friend of theirs was, I don't remember how old he was or I was at the time, but he was close to my age, just a few years older than me, and like he was doing really well and everything was fine, and he just went in because he hadn't been to a doctor in a while, and they found out that he had already had stage 4 colon cancer. It wasn't showing any signs, and he was dead within 8 months or 6 months or something like that. And that was kind of shocking because it was so similar to kind of like what I had done and where I was at that point. So that was a little scary. And then I also found out that a friend of mine from college who I reconnected with in that time on social media, I knew that he had had some sort of cancer. But when I found him, he was doing really well and he was really active and everything seemed fine. And then just one morning I woke up, or maybe not fine, but at least for the time being. And one morning I woke up and one of the mutual friends we had posted sort of like a tribute RIP post that he had passed away. And that was shocking to me because he also seemed so healthy, even though I know that was a different case, but still. So that motivated me to I made an appointment. I'm just going to go see a new GI, let him know my story, and everything's fine right now, but just make sure it is. And again, to get right to it, when I had the colonoscopy, even though I wasn't feeling any, or maybe very little physical symptoms at the time, the insides looked just as bad as they did in 2008, 2009, which even shocked him because obviously we don't look sick when we're not feeling well. But sometimes your family and close friends can tell if something's wrong. Are you all right? You might be a little pale. You just kind of have that look. He even said, even your posture. He said, sitting here talking to you, you don't look like you feel bad. You're sitting up, you're energetic, you're you don't really look pale. You look fit. He was saying just if you look at the blood, your numbers, you're someone who looks like you might get dizzy upon standing. And so so he was really kind of shocked too. But his best, I really liked this last doctor I had. Because he was the type that if he didn't know something, he would just tell you flat out that he didn't know, but he could give you a very good explanation that at least made sense. And what his explanation was is he thought for so many years, just the fact that that I'm active and I enjoy being active, that wasn't really hard for me to still wake up every day and try to go do something active. But he said somehow it's my lifestyle. I was able to kind of overcome what little blood that I had, and it's the human body's going to adapt to whatever you put it through anyway. That somehow my body just adapted to that little tiny amount of blood and being able to run on that. Even though I did experience some fatigue here or there, but I was able to operate at a much higher level than just kind of like a textbook would tell you somebody would. I don't look at it as I force myself to. To me, it was just more of that's what I enjoy doing. If I'm able to do it, even if it's difficult, I'm going to keep doing it unless I'm physically unable. So he said, just over the years, your body just adapted to this very low blood count and a way to just kind of mask the symptoms, so you wouldn't even know that you're sick. So in that year, after that, he talked me into trying Entyvio, which I didn't want to be on any more drugs, but he kind of explained it to me, and he said how it's more specialized in your digestive tract as opposed to Humira, which could act on many different organs once it's in your body.
I've dedicated most of my life to fitness and health, but as I've grown older and felt the effects of fatigue as I've battled Crohn's, I no longer want to spend hours in the gym every day, which is how I first stumbled across the Cellar Size Rebounder. It's become the backbone of my fitness routine these days, giving me the ability to tailor my workouts from gentle movement to intense jumping that literally activates every cell in the body. And the best part is, it only takes 10 minutes a day for an incredible workout. Find out for yourself what a difference Cellar Size can make in your health by visiting crownsfitnessfood.com/Cellar Size.
All right, so we moved outside, so it should be a little bit quieter. It got kind of busy inside the cafe, but so you were telling your story, you were starting to talk about switching over to Entyvio and just the difference of how that doesn't affect all the different organs the way Humira can. And so Entyvio is a little bit more concentrated, focused on the gut. So tell me about your story. Pick up where you were leaving off from the Entyvio, and then I think that was about to lead into kind of 2016, 17. So
yeah, so at that point, I was pretty satisfied with all the things that I had tried, and it's going on closer to 8 years from when I was first diagnosed, and as I had said, surgery was always an option, but it was kind of like it was my call. I was treating it well enough that it wasn't like they were going to force you in for like an emergency operation or anything like that. So I finally decided, I'll give Entyvio one shot, and if it doesn't work, I think I'm ready to go ahead and just start, seriously taking the steps towards surgery. So if you couldn't hear me, what I was saying before is my doctor, short of like a full-on guarantee, he told me that Entyvio should either help you or just do nothing. There's not a lot of chance for side effects, which, in my case, obviously having it back now, it didn't do anything, but there were absolutely no side effects either. I did have actually what I'm pretty sure is like my first and only legitimate panic attack. The very first IV, because this was back at it was the same clinic where I went for the first one of the methotrexate, in the same room nonetheless. So it just it was really freaking me out, and I was panicking, but I kept taking deep breaths, and I was like, I was getting all the air, so I was like, I think it's just me. And the nurse came in, because I buzzed her like 2 or 3 times, and she came in the third time. I asked if she just stayed with me for a little bit, and the third time she was like, "No, so I think you're fine. I think you're just having a panic attack." She's like, "I have them all the time. You'll be okay." So I just kept. I still was kind of freaking out, but I just kept taking deep breaths. As long as I'm breathing, I really don't think anything is wrong. I think she's right. I got through that one, and I did them every 8 weeks or whatever it was for a year. And at that point, I mean, the symptoms were still so minimal that I couldn't really tell if it was helping or not. Anyway, but we went back. I don't remember if I did another colonoscopy or they just did some other tests that would show. That would indicate if there's inflammation. I remember at some point I had to do one of where you swallow the pill, the camera. I don't remember when exactly that was in there, but with this new doctor, I remember having to do that. That was an experience as well. But ultimately, it didn't do anything. So I did, start taking the approach to having surgery. And also, if it's anything you'd be interested in talking about, because I know it can be kind of controversial for some people, is later in that. Probably 2015, right up until when I had surgery, I was also legally using marijuana. In California, when I started, it was still just medical, and then I think I stopped using it just before it became fully legal. But at the time, I went to an actual doctor, and they don't really prescribe it. They just kind of give you literature on it and kind of show you this is what I would use, or ask them about this. So it's not really a prescription. Really, they just kind of turn you loose. You're free to use whatever you want, really. But for me, it didn't seem to do anything with the inflammation, because I was doing that before. I started just before I decided to go on to the Entyvio. Then I was using them at the same time. I'd obviously, again, I'd asked my doctor, and he said it was fine, which this doctor was really cool too, because sometimes the regular GI might really strongly be against marijuana, because it's not something they know as much about. But mine was really cool. He really did make me feel like, whether I can help you or someone else can help you, or I'm just monitoring you, I want you to get healthy. He really was a great doctor. So he kind of, when I was using it, he was still doing the blood tests every 2 months or whatever it was. But ultimately it didn't work. But what I had the biggest impact for me were the ones I took as a sleeping aid. I never had serious trouble sleeping. Once I was asleep, I slept pretty well, but sometimes I'd have trouble falling asleep. And the ones that I kind of settled on after trying some different ones, they were edibles. And depending on how sleepy you want to feel, you can kind of just eyeball it, what a dose is. But usually what I would take, I would eat it about an hour and a half or so before bed. And I wouldn't feel really high or drowsy, not any more than just if you have a really bad cold. I never obviously drove with it because there wouldn't be any reason, but just to kind of, if you've ever been in that state and trying to drive and you're kind of drowsy, it probably wouldn't have been any worse than that. I didn't feel stupid or silly or anything like that. And then after about an hour and a half, you would just get to this point where all you want to do is just sit or lay somewhere and close your eyes. And I would do that, and it's before I knew it, I was out, and so it actually worked really well. But again, that was kind of, they don't really prescribe it. They just kind of show you maybe this is the direction you want to go. Then it's up to you to just kind of go to the dispensary and, talk to them. And actually one of the people I met there had Crohn's as well, which helped. The sleeping aid definitely helped more than anything. But I still think just from talking to other people and doing research, that's definitely something that helps a lot.
So you tried almost everything.
Almost.
From there, all the different medications and everything. So what finally prompted you started to have the talks about surgery again? What was finally the straw that broke the camel's back for you?
Just for me, it had been long enough. I was exhausted. I knew surgery would open my diet up a lot more and allow me to do a lot more things than I could when I was treating it, just kind of through diet and lifestyle. And I feel like if I had to, I could have done that longer, but not being fully healthy and then still having to go every year, to get checked out to make sure that you're healthy and you can go another year. That just felt like such a process that was going to keep me stuck at home, because I was stuck at home this whole time. And I just really, right out of college, I really wanted to get back onto whatever I had left of an adult life. And I just felt like surgery was the best choice that was going to get me to move on, hopefully be able to find a full-time job and otherwise just be a normal person, because I just felt like I'd been just stuck and not living a normal life for so long. So for me overall, it was time. I was satisfied with everything that I'd tried, and I felt like if something was going to actually work and put me in remission, I would have found it, by now.
So you decided, 2017 is when you decided to go ahead and have the surgery, correct?
Yeah, well, I think it was actually still 16, but by the time the whole process went through, and I met with the surgeon and all that, my actual surgery date was November 1st, 2017. So yeah, so somewhere in there.
So what was it like after you had this surgery? Did your diet immediately open up? Were you still on were you trying to take the Entyvio at the same time, or?
No, I'd already stopped the Entyvio. At this point, I was just ready to do the surgery, and right away, like right afterward, well, in my case, I actually had it. It was everything wasn't functioning properly right afterward, because normally they let you out after like maybe 3 to 5 days, and in that time, they start you on. I think after a few days, you can have like solid food, but it has to be like very well. Actually, what they still consider a full liquid diet. So things like cream of wheat. I think it's like really soft fruits, yogurt, anything that's essentially like a thick liquid. When it goes in. But I wasn't having any output right away, and that ended up keeping me there for about 2 weeks total. Because I remember it was November 15th when I got out, and eventually, what they figured out what was wrong, it was just the natural inflammation from the process that had just swollen everything shut, and nothing was going through, which turned out to not be that big of a deal. It was just more of kind of a hassle, because at that point, like, you've already had it done, you're kind of. I mean, for me, I wasn't really like in shock or anything, because again, this was like a long time, knowing that this could happen someday. But still, you just want to get home and start kind of learning how it works. And everyone tells you to, like, early on it's going to be difficult to adjust to, and you just want to start that process. So being stuck in the hospital, kind of indefinitely while they don't know exactly what's wrong. Although my surgeon assured me that, like, that's not completely unheard of. So they just had to figure out what it was so they could fix it. So. Yeah, I mean, looking back now, it wasn't that big of a deal. But at the time, it was, after about 4 or 5 days, it was pretty tough every day seeing, like, maybe the next day, or it's, 2 days after everything starts working properly, they'll let me go home. So, when you haven't even reached that first day, it's like, you're in there at least 2 more days every day. So, that was kind of hard. But, early on, they give you a list of, like, a timeline, like maybe within the first week, only these foods. And then you can slowly start building up until you can have more solid foods. And the last on that list, I don't remember exactly, but I want to say it was like 6 to 8 months to have things like raw nuts, raw vegetables, maybe some other high fiber foods, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, you obviously have to start slow. That's what I joke with people with the with the eating. It's not like I checked out or was discharged and went straight to a restaurant or anything like that.
Right after.
Yeah, it definitely took some time. Well, in fact, I remember when I first had my appetite back, it was probably about 3 weeks after being home. And I just had a huge bowl of like hot cereal, and it filled me up, and I was so uncomfortable. Like the rest of the day, I was having cramps, and I didn't really have like my full appetite back till like almost 24 hours later. So it's and that was just on hot cereal, So and it really wasn't even a large amount. It just compared to what I had been eating, it was like I think it was like just one serving even, but.
So what finally got you interested in doing the eating challenges? So it sounds like it probably took a full year for you to finally recover. You talked about 6 to 8 months, adding back the nuts and seeds like that. When did you finally decide food challenge?
Actually, I decided that before I was able to do it. Well, I shouldn't say I decided. I was interested in that before. When I was in the hospital, even before I had surgery, I'd always had just a personal Instagram account, and I didn't share like too much gross detail, but just more like family members and like longtime friends. They always want to know how I'm doing also. So I would share. It was just kind of everything about my life. But then over time, I was like, well, after I have surgery, I kind of like to try to connect with more people and share, more stuff that might be too gross, for just like just like your regular page, or at least certainly by visuals. So I already knew that I wanted to make like a second separate account, and then slowly start kind of like maybe deleting some of the stuff from the other one, and obviously knowing that eventually I wanted to move too. So it's like if you meet new people, they don't automatically just know that you have this condition. I mean not that I'm like embarrassed by it or anything, but it's just like when do you tell someone? Just just a hi, I have Crohn's. It's
and it's not only you. It's
right.
A part of your life, but it's not the only.
So it's not something I necessarily want to hide, but I don't want it to just automatically like just be out there for everyone. Upon meeting you either necessarily. So so I knew I wanted to make the second page, but I was like, other than just your experiences, like I wanted it to go in some kind of a direction. I was kind of playing around with thoughts in my head, and actually it was when I was in the hospital. I want to do something kind of with eating because that's what I feel like was restricted most because I was still pretty active even before I had surgery. I mean, I wasn't as healthy as I could be, but I think eating was overall like the biggest thing that I was looking forward to. And to my surprise, I thought there were still going to be some restrictions, but my surgeon told me, she said, if I do a good job, on the surgery, you'll be able to eat whatever you want. She said, you might still find over time there are things that give you trouble, or maybe you can't eat. But she said, don't go into it thinking you're going to have any restrictions. You should be able to eat anything. Like, I mean, you could tell she's really proud of her work too. Like, yeah. I want you to be able to eat anything. So I was like, well, that sounds good. But obviously, I was going to take it slowly. But while I was in the hospital, I watched a lot of like the food travel, not just like the stuff your face kind of shows, but just the travel shows and the food shows and the cooking shows. And so I had already kind of had food on my mind, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And somewhere in there, I must have seen an episode of Man vs. Food. But also, I remember this day really, really well. ESPN was debuting or premiering it was one of their 30 for 30s. It was on the wrestler, Ric Flair. And he's the one who kind of made like the WWF, like just that over-the-top, showmanship, kind of ridiculousness, campiness to it. And somewhere in there, it just kind of got my mind thinking with all these things I've been watching. And I was like, what if I did that with food? Like, at first, it wasn't going to be big food, but just even foods that like maybe you're not supposed to eat or anything, like just as long as I felt safe doing it, just test the limits of all things eating with an ostomy. And then eventually that just manifested into like, I want to do challenges, see if I can do those. And the first one I did, I don't remember the exact date, but it was mid-April, so 5-ish, 6-ish months after surgery, mid-April 2018. I did in Paso Robles, California. It was the whole meal was 3 pounds. It was just a burger and fries, a really large burger and fries. And it was just the vegetables I was a little worried about. I was just extremely thorough in chewing those, but everything else, at that point, seemed safe. I hadn't had any major setbacks, leading up to that time in reintroducing new foods. I just had to take it slowly. I followed what they said, and as long as I didn't have any, like hiccups or anything, I felt safe, kind of pushing it a little bit more within reason. And just kind of in that moment, I didn't even know if I was going to finish it because I'd never done one. I just thought it was fun. I didn't have,
especially only 6 months after surgery.
I didn't have any like really extensive preparation. Just going really hungry. As hungry as you can be. And probably about maybe 35. It took me 45 minutes. Probably about 35 into it, and you had an hour to do it. About 35 minutes into it is when I kind of realized like I'm going to finish this thing. And it was such a rush, and like I hadn't just eaten like a big meal like carefree like that in over a decade, and it just like that's when I knew I was like, this is what I want to do. Like I just want to eat like everything, eat really big meals. Try to win as many of these as I can, and and then just share them too. Like not to sound like you're boasting or like to show off necessarily, but overall on my page, like I just want to make surgery seem less intimidating and less daunting to people because for me, it's. I mean, on the one hand, you definitely kind of wish I'd done it sooner, but at the same time, like. I can almost guarantee you I wouldn't have this hobby now because if I'd done it sooner, I wouldn't have missed so much time, which wouldn't have made it fun to do. So I probably would have just gone right back to eating like a normal person, and it wouldn't have been as enjoyable after having to be on such a strict and limited diet for so long is what's made it so fun. But yeah, just to show that, we can still eat a lot of things. And like most people probably don't want to go eat these excessive quantities, but even if it's just once in a while, like let's say if, I don't know, you go out with your friends and that's just what you do like once a year, you guys all meet or something like that. And, maybe ask your doctor, like, hey, after I have surgery, will I be able to eat a 4-pound burrito? And they'll say, oh, no, there's no way. It's like, you can pull up my page. And, not that even you would want to, but just to show, like, well, it's been done. Yeah, exactly. Just to show that people have done these things. So
what a mind shift, too, coming from the perspective of a lot of people, even if it's before surgery or they haven't had surgery, people with Crohn's and IBD, I know for me for a long time, you become afraid of food. You're afraid to eat. You wouldn't ever dream of doing anything like that. So to go through the surgery and then to really have this freedom of just not only can I eat food again, but I'm going to show others that there is no limits, that you can do this. What a cool thing to be able to show that.
Yeah, and obviously there's no guarantee that anyone's surgery is going to be as successful as mine was. And in the back of my mind, that is always there because, having Crohn's, it could show up again, somewhere else, not in your colon. However, mine is one of those tricky cases where I was kind of like, my diagnosis was flip-flopped a couple times. And the final one, I don't even know if this is a real diagnosis or just like, like my doctor put it, kind of makes sense in the doctor world. But my official last diagnosis I had was Crohn's dominant colitis, which what that means is I don't remember exactly which test, but like on some of the blood tests, it looks a lot more like Crohn's. But on the actual symptoms, like I've never had any issues outside of my colon. So obviously, with Crohn's, I mean, if you've had issues other places, even if you have the surgery, likely it's going to come up somewhere else. You might not be able to eat as freely. So in my case, I was fortunate that even though it is considered Crohn's, that's why I tell people I have Crohn's. It acts a lot more like colitis, and my colon is pretty much the only thing that was really giving me any trouble. Yeah, along the digestive tract. But yeah, I mean, I was in that mindset that if I had to for the rest of my life be on those strict diets, I was going to. So the fact that I don't now, and I still when I'm not doing those, I mean, I still pretty much eat like I did before I had the surgery. I would say the only thing I eat on a regular basis that I couldn't eat or wouldn't before is like just various kinds of breads because it's an easy go-to thing. Bread, toast, whatever. Yeah. But other than that, I still eat. A lot, actually not even a lot of meat, mostly chicken, fish, vegetables, not a ton of grains.
Fruit. Clean, basic diet.
Yeah, for the most part. And then obviously when I do the challenges, I pretty much throw anything out. I mean, I can't tout them as healthy, but I still try to stick to real food. I mean, there are some where like certain things in there might be highly processed, but something like hot dogs. I don't think I could ever just consciously do a hot dog challenge because they're so processed. It's gross. Like if you fixed up like a burger or an omelet or something that had like one chopped up or maybe even two, just a small amount, I could just kind of close my eyes and like, okay, well, I never eat this stuff, so it's not really going to hurt me just this one time. But yeah, I don't think I could ever do like a few that I've done have like a lot of American cheese, and that's about as far as I can go consciously. Where I can just kind of close my eyes and just pretend that it's something else or whatever. But I try to still stick to real food, even if it's not healthy. Like I haven't done a lot of like sweets or desserts, like junk food type challenges yet, which I am open to. But it's just I haven't really had a chance to do a lot of them, and those aren't necessarily ones I seek out either for that reason. But yeah, I've done a lot more of like burgers, sandwiches, omelets, burritos, or some that are just a combination of like a few different items. But usually it's still some sort of like a real meal for the most part.
How often do you try to do the food challenges?
Well, on a regular schedule, I try to space them out approximately every 2 to 3 weeks. But since I moved out of California, there's not as many nearby. But I'll also do, when I was sick or before I had surgery, I had to learn to cook for myself a lot too. So I can always just like make something like, that serves however many people or just like one, basically just one giant meal, like homemade, and just eat it myself for fun. And
own challenge.
Yeah. So like, and if you go by weight, that's kind of like good practice, to stick with that. But otherwise, like if I'm traveling, I might do, depending on how large they are, I might do a few. Like I've done 3 and 5 days before, which I wouldn't be able to keep up that pace.
Do you eat in between the challenges?
It depends. Like I would say, like this time being out on the road, I don't do a lot of physical activity or moving in between, so I don't really build up a lot of hunger. So I haven't eaten much in between, maybe just a little snacking here or there. But normally, like if I'm at home and I'm still active, I still eat like. If it's a really big one, I probably won't eat dinner that following, the rest of that day. Or if it's a big one or like I did it early enough in the day, I might have just like a small dinner at best. But usually right back the following morning, if I'm back on like on my regular like activity routine and all that, I go right back to like how I normally eat, usually.
Now, how does fitness, you talked about a little bit just being active, how does fitness play into your overall kind of maintenance of health and managing symptoms? Because you're pretty active, you showcase on your Instagram, food and fitness. So tell me a little bit about that journey and kind of what you do with it now.
Yeah, well, I was always really active growing up, like just, playing sports and everything. So just being active is natural to me. I got more into weightlifting after getting sick because I wouldn't say that Crohn's like specifically stopped me from playing any sports, but it kind of made them not fun. And, the way your body is always kind of, you can't always control how it's going to respond to certain things. So it's ultimately, and plus when I was diagnosed, I was 27. So you're just starting to get that age too, where it's like, unless you actually have like a career or anything, and it's like, maybe it's time to start, slowing it down and just shutting it down anyway. So, so between those things, I mean, like I feel like I aged like a decade overnight, when I got back to being able to be a little active. So, so I stopped playing as much like, sports, kind of high impact kind of things and started, I mean, I lifted weights before, but I didn't really, have any kind of set routines. I just kind of did it as part of your, I enjoy doing a little. So as I learned more about it, and also working in the fitness industry, I got more into weights after I got sick and, started to recover again.
Yeah, I think I saw on your Instagram that you got your exercise physiology certification while you were in the hospital recovering. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd been a personal trainer right out of college since 2008. And then in 2017, I'd been studying, but I got all the material and really started studying that first 6 months or so. And then, it was in May of 2017, I got my exercise physiologist certification, and that's a test I don't ever want to take again. so I want to make sure I keep all those current with all the continuing education. It wasn't really any new information, but it's a lot more in depth, and there's a lot to remember. So.
Do you find that it has helped your symptoms over the years of just keeping everything under control, staying active?
I think so, just because, being active, it's just good for anything. It's good even just, kind of mentally, spiritually, that kind of thing. But it's hard to say, because, just by nature, I like to be active. On my I call it my sick page, but my page where I feature more about, life after surgery, I'll do more sometimes where I'll show progress pictures or shirtless pictures and that kind of thing. But on my other page, or in real life, I don't go around shirtless or short sleeves or anything all the time. So it's I'm just one of those people. I really do just enjoy being active. So I don't just do it for the way it looks, or so it's hard for me to imagine not doing anything. So it's really hard to say. Because the only time that I wasn't active when I was sick is when pretty much I was too sick to stand up, and do anything. Even right after surgery, they want you to walk, get your 5,000 steps. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get 7,500 because that's just how I am. And I did that the first day, but it took such a toll. I was kind of, okay, well, just do 5,000 till, some people struggle to get 5,000, so okay, well, 5,000 is definitely doable. It's, I don't hurt the next day. I feel like I could do more. So then, over time I tried to, but that's just my mentality. It's kind of not to the point where it's detrimental, but that's just my instinct is if you, even with these challenges, you give me some kind of a goal, I see if I can do a little more, just for fun, it's, but yeah, 7,500 early on was too much, but yeah, I think just being active, it just helps your body kind of, with whatever it's dealing with, it's, it's going to help in any way. So, yeah, I definitely think physical activity helps, but you also have to listen to your body. If you're going through a flare and building muscle, for example, might be your goal, it's not really going to happen because so much energy is going into just keeping yourself healthy. Maybe you should scale back to just, if you're lifting weights, something that's just, not really challenging for you, but just to kind of keep the muscle stimulated and, just kind of keep that tissue active. Or if that's too much, even just walking, whatever you can do, I think is good to do. But if you get dizzy walking, obviously even that's something that maybe you should restrict unless you're, able to do something. But yeah, it might even just be walking in your house every day, walking up the steps, 2 or 3 times a day, whatever. But yeah, as you get healthier, I think you can push it more, but you definitely have to listen to your body as well.
So you mentioned a little bit when you started your page of just showing life after surgery and so showing the food that you eat and doing the fitness, just keeping healthy, showing your fitness and showing the food. What has the journey been like in having that page and sharing your story and opening up so much more about it and showing this side of life after surgery?
It's been really nice. I've met a lot more people since doing that one, because obviously I'd met a few before, because with my other page I just kind of shared a little bit of just all aspects of my life, because I didn't really hide it. But yeah, I've definitely met a lot more people. And what I think is really fun too is a lot of people have taken similar approaches that I have, but maybe they might still do competitive athletics or bodybuilding or some other kind of like track or swimming or even bowling. Whatever the event is, just you still do it. And for me, I also just picked eating because I'd never seen that before, and so it's I would do it if I wasn't posting or if nobody would watch it because it's fun. But to be able to share it with people and whether you just get the fun, funny comments or shocked comments, or other people that are just maybe they don't want to eat on such a large scale, but just something that I've done, maybe just a more of a normal size. They'll be hey, I think I could eat something like that. It's just fun to see and connect, and everybody in their own way has some kind of a struggle, but some way that they're overcoming it too. Even if it's just maybe you've got a few kids and just being able to maintain your household is, I mean, that's overcoming it and, and doing something. So, I think that's what's cool is just being able to connect with so many people and, whether it's people that have reached out and say that you inspire them, or if they're going through a hard time and you can wish them encouragement, or, just, again, people that do something, with their ostomy and, it doesn't stop them. It's just fun to see that there's so many other people out there, like you in some way.
So before we wrap up, tell me a little bit about the challenge that you're just about to take on after we wrap up here. So we're at Lulu's Bakery and Cafe in San Antonio. Tell me about the challenge that you're doing today.
So this one, the whole meal is 3.5 pounds. The star, so to speak, is the chicken fried steak. It's about 1.25 pounds. And for ones that I've done, this should be no problem. Where the issue comes in is you only have 12 minutes to do it. And that's one thing is having a colostomy. Obviously, I'm not a speed eater. You do get your choice of the sides. So I'm gonna make it as safe as possible so I can eat as fast as I'm able to eat comfortably and not have to worry about, well, I shouldn't say not have to worry about chewing. You always have to worry about chewing. But like the meats, mashed potatoes, I'm not sure if I'm going to get some other sides. The biscuits that come with it, the gravy, those are all things like compared to like the raw vegetables or beans you might have like in a burrito or something. Those are things that can be digested a lot easier, and I feel like I don't have to chew quite as thoroughly. So realistically, 12 minutes, that's a pretty tight time limit. But I don't think it's so tight that it's out of the question. I mean, for kind of like precedent, whether they're homemade or actual other challenges, like I've done some in like the 3 to 4 pound range, upwards of like 15 to 20 minutes. So, having one that I don't have to stress over too much. I mean, obviously safety is always number one. I always joke if I win a shirt but end up in the ER, I'm pretty sure I still lost the challenge, even if you did win the shirt. So I've never had any major like failures with challenges. Like I've never puked at a restaurant. I've had what I would call some reactions, kind of felt a little sick afterward, but this is like hours after when I'm at home. So if I ever felt that way at a restaurant, I just decide, I can't do this one because that's sort of like the bare minimums. Don't go to the hospital and don't puke. So other than that, I kind of right because I am sure sooner or later there might be one day where you think you know your body and you're so close and you just push it and maybe it'll come back up. But at this point, I've never been in that situation. I've either finished it or it's been so much food left when I start to feel even the slightest uncertainty that it's like, well, I'm not going to eat this fist-sized pile of French fries after eating, whatever it was that I've already eaten with like 6 minutes left. So I might as well just call it and not risk anything happening. So so the 12-minute time limit, that's really, really where the true challenge comes in today. But who knows? I might surprise myself and be able to knock it. I don't think it's out of the question. I just think it's a little like if I'd put money on it, I think you'd have to put the odds on the time running out. But I'm going to go ahead and just knock it out as fast as I can for fun, and we'll see what that is. So.
And we are going to post it on the live, so we should be able to save that video. I'm hoping we'll live stream it on the Instagram. We should be able to save it, and then I'll share it so that hopefully I can have it attached to the podcast so that listeners can go back and rewatch it. So if people want to keep up with you, where can tell them where they can find you online and where they can follow your journey?
Yeah, my Instagram handle, it's at McFlare. It's MIC_FLARE, like a flare up. And I'm working on a YouTube channel right now. A lot of people that I've met on there, that's what they told me, that they see all the before and after pictures, or sometimes I might just have a few like short clips that I'll share in the stories. Like if the one has a really long time limit that I don't have to eat too quickly, or no time limit. And then I say, we want to see it because it seems crazy, some of the before and after pictures. So I'm working on that now, but I'm not the best with technology. So I don't have that completely up and running. The best I can do right now is like I'm collecting footage, and then eventually I'll be able to. There'll be a delay before that actually gets on there. But I'll have I'll share it if you follow me. I'll share a link and keep everybody posted with that. And actually with that, I don't just want to do the challenge. It'll just be kind of an extension of my Instagram. But also I want to share more of like just regular meals and talk more about how I can eat so much more after. Not more in quantity, but just so many, like a variety of things after having surgery. And I'm still scared of corn. A lot of people have told me if I can eat peas, lentils, beans, and those kind of things, corn shouldn't be a problem. But I also feel like there's got to be some kind of kryptonite out there, and that'd just be so ironic that I can eat these massive 6 pounds of something, but then like a corn kernel is going to send me to the ER. Like I just have this fear, and I've actually accidentally had like small chunks of corn too, and they just pass like with normal people. It passes. But I've never had like a spoonful or a mouthful of corn or anything, and I'm just kind of anxious and scared to do that, and I really don't miss it much. So I'm sure someday I'll go ahead and try that, but for the time being, that's like the one thing that I just have this fear of.
Lettuce is my one thing. Lettuce is my kryptonite that I'm starting to eat more and more foods, but I'm still afraid of that one. So
yeah, that's one I have to chew thoroughly, but I've never had any major issues with it. So.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been really fun, and I'm excited. So why don't we go ahead and get in there, and we'll start this food challenge.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Hey everyone! Many of you know how much I love the Intestinal Fortitude supplements. Ever since discovering these products when I interviewed the founder, creator, and Crohn's warrior, Will Jenkins, for this podcast, I've been using their probiotic, gut lining repair, and anti-inflammatory. These products were developed by a Crohn's warrior specifically for those of us with IBD, and for me, they have become an important part of keeping my symptoms, including mucus and inflammation, at bay. I truly love these products, and now I'm excited to let you know that if you use code CFF10, that's CFF like Crohn's Fitness Food, you can receive 10% off your order. Visit crohnsfitnessfood.com/IF. And if you want to hear more about the creator, Will Jenkins, be sure to listen to episode 11 of this podcast. Thank you for listening to the Crohn's Fitness Food Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have an IBD story, either as a patient or a family member that you'd like to share as a guest on this podcast, or if you have a topic you'd like to hear about, send me an email at crohnsfitnessfood@gmail.com. If you'd like to learn more about me and my Crohn's journey, follow me on Instagram using @Crohn'sFitnessFood, or visit my blog for in-depth articles about my struggles and victories with Crohn's through diet, fitness, and lifestyle at www.crohnsfitnessfood.com. And finally, remember, be strong, be grateful, and be the warrior that you are.